Hello everybody, welcome back to Mummy Week here in the month of October. We are on part 4 of 7 and we are finally to my mummy movie, The Mummy of My Childhood, 1999's The Mummy, starring Brendan Fraser. Before I get too ahead of myself, if you haven't seen my other mummy videos, feel free to check those out. And I believe that mummy movies are taking up the last week of October, which means probably, unless I change my mind, there should be 7 parts of Dracula, Frankenstein, and werewolf movies for you to peruse through also. But today we're talking about The Mummy. I got a lot of notes, so we're going to get into it. But spoiler alert, I love this movie. Also, I record these videos ahead of time when I can. So even though this is coming out in late October, it's being recorded in early August, where last weekend I just watched Jungle Cruise. And Jungle Cruise wanted so badly to be The Mummy, and I didn't dislike it. But watching that movie, I was just like, I get to rewatch The Mummy soon for my October series. So I was looking forward to this even more than I would have been. So let's talk about The Mummy. So I mentioned in some of my videos for some of the other Mummy movies that the timeline of when we see certain events seems a little odd to me as a modern viewer, and that might just be the modern viewer in me, but we pick up at one point, we time jump ahead to another point, some things happen, and then we flash way back to ancient Egypt, and then we come back and we continue on. And I mentioned in one of those videos, why don't we just see the stuff in order, right? We understand how mummy movies work. We understand what's going on here. Why are we putting it in this order? Well, this film finally does that. So maybe that's where I got that expectation from. I didn't explicitly remember that about this film, but it makes sense that that was in my brain. So this film, we see the ancient stuff first. We see the slightly less modern stuff next. And then we see the present day stuff from then on through the rest of the movie. So it flows a lot more logically. There are some callbacks here to Hammer's version of the film. I knew there were callbacks to the Universal version. Obviously, a lot of the names of the characters are taken from those. And this is another Universal movie. Excuse me. So it makes sense that there would be callbacks to that. But there's also some callbacks to the Hammer's version, which I had seen before. I've seen this movie before, but I never realized that those were callbacks to something else. So the scene where they cut out Imhotep's tongue is pretty similar to a scene in the Hammer version, and the shot of him being wrapped up in the bandages is pretty similar to when Boris Karloff was getting wrapped up. Oh wait, not Boris Karloff. Christopher Lee, it would have been. So couple nice parallels to both older versions of the film. During the opening narration by the Magi, he says that this mummy is going to have the strength of ages, power over the sands, and the glory of invincibility. So, again, that's not a line that I specifically remember. There are a lot of lines from this that I remember and that my family has quoted for decades. That's not one that I specifically remember, but again, looking back on it now, as someone that watches movie now, one of the biggest criticisms I hear of movies now is that the villain has vaguely defined powers. We don't know what their powers are. They can just kind of do whatever. Apocalypse in the X-Men movies, Enchantress in Suicide Squad. There's a lot of it. And just this one little line, the strength of ages, so we understand he's going to be strong. Power over the sands, so we see him controlling sands throughout the movie. And the glory of invincibility. That covers most of what he does in the movie. The only stuff that he does that doesn't really come from that, and that also, because we're also told during the curse that he's going to I forget what word they use, but assimilate basically the eyes and the tongue and the organs and the things of these other people. The only other thing that he does is control other mummies towards the end of the film. And that's not explicitly explained, but I feel like there's enough by that point, we've got enough of an idea that there are inscriptions on different things, and that can bring things back to life to a certain extent and control them to a certain extent. So most of what he does in this movie is pretty well set up and explained, which, like, that's not like a huge, like, hey, good for you. It's just like, that doesn't happen anymore. Movies just let villains do whatever they want. You know, Iron Man 3, we've got Aldrich Killian breathes fire one time and then never does it again. Like, so many movies have villains just do something because it'll look cool on screen and then forget that they have that power for the rest of the movie. And so it's just nice to, like, have it set up so that we know what to expect. And I feel like a lot of people, they would hear that but not really register with it. And so they might forget about it. So they're still surprised when they see those things. But if they then can think back, or if they watch it again, then they're like, oh, wow, they actually did set this up. So it's just nice to have a movie set up and follow its own rules. Okay. I did write down the question, why did they give him all these powers? But I guess, you know, when you're talking ancient curses and stuff like that, you don't get to pick and choose. So they really wanted him to suffer the, you know, eternal cycle of being eaten alive and eating the scarabs, and then they eating him and he eating them over and over and over for eternity. And that happened to come with all these other powers if he ever did get revived. So I guess they just took the chance that he's probably not going to get revived, and we really want him to suffer forever, so we're going to go ahead and do this. So it's a little weird, but hey, it's an ancient curse. It's not like you can copy and paste certain parts and just make a new one, right? I don't know. I don't know how these curses are made. I go with it, though. I know some people have an issue with that, but again, I've said this in other videos. If the movie is good, I will forgive a lot more nitpicks than if it's not good. So then we have our time jump to 1923. We see is it the French Foreign Legion? I'm not sure. It reminds me of Abbott and Costello in the French Foreign Legion. But we've got some kind of military with Benny and Rick O'Connell here. And I just put Benny is great. I love Benny in this. So good. Then I wrote guns and guns and guns. So this early scene when this other force is attacking on horseback. We've got Brendan Fraser. He's got his rifle, and he's got, like, you know, the bullet in his mouth, and so he's firing, pulling the bolt back, taking that bullet, throwing it in, firing again, and it's like one shot at a time, but he's doing the best he can to be as efficient as he can, and then he throws down that gun, takes out 2 revolvers, pow, 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 shoots all through those, tosses those aside, pulls out 2 more, and, like, this had such an impression on me as a kid, because when I was a kid, like, anytime I played with Nerf guns or water guns or sticks that I pretended were guns, like, I would stack them up in groups of 2, just like Brendan Fraser did in this movie. And there's something similar in the Boondock Saints, which I first saw when I was in college, and that kind of, like, reignited that idea, because I hadn't watched The Mummy, I guess, for a while when I was in college, not sure why. But, like, so I know other movies have done this, and I'm not going to say that this was the first one to do it, but this is the first one that I saw that did it. And so, like, still to this day, I run Nerf camps, and I do Nerf parties and stuff like that, and still, when I actually play, when I want to have a loadout, I'm like, I gotta have my sets of revolvers so that I can just ka-chow, and then toss those, and then ka-chow, and then toss those, and then have more, and so cool, so cool. It does a really good job of setting up Rick O'Connell throughout the rest of this movie. So we get another time jump 3 years later. So then I wrote down that ladder bit from Jungle Cruise. So in this movie, when Evie's in the library, she has that bit where she's on the ladder, and then she pulls up, and then she's walking around on the ladder, and shenanigans ensue. And there's also a ladder scene where shenanigans ensue in the new Jungle Cruise movie, which is, like, kind of one of the first things that I saw while watching that movie that I was like, wow, this wants to be The Mummy. And it's not the same bits. I don't want to rag on Jungle Cruise too much in this video, but it kind of and I'm doing it too with things like the revolvers, right? I'm like, to me, that's from The Mummy. And when I see it in other things, even if they did it before, I'm going to think that's from The Mummy. So I just had the idea of, if a kid goes and sees Jungle Cruise, right? And then their parents are like, wow, this reminds me of The Mummy. You should watch The Mummy. And the kid hasn't seen The Mummy yet. And then they watch The Mummy. They're going to see that ladder scene, and they're going to think of Jungle Cruise. They're going to be like, oh, that's the thing from Jungle Cruise, even though it's not from Jungle, right? So I need to stop talking so much about every single point. I wrote down Elektra's dad. I'm pretty sure that's the actor. The librarian is the guy that played Elektra Nachios' father in Daredevil. Which, again, this is the first thing that I saw him in. So when Daredevil came out a few years later and I saw Daredevil, I was like, that's the guy from The Mummy. And I don't know if they're in I don't think these videos will be released yet, but I've recorded videos for oh no, yeah, these ones are out. Sorry. For G.I. Joe. And Arnold Vosloo, who plays the Mummy in this movie, is in G.I. Joe. And when I was watching G.I. Joe, I'm like, it's the Mummy! So there are a lot of actors who I know from this film. Even Rachel Weisz, if I see her in something else. In Black Widow, I was like, that's the lady from the Mummy. So this movie has a lot of starting points for me. We do get jump scares in this movie, but what I think makes it work in this movie is that this is not a horror movie. So when a horror movie uses jump scares, in my opinion, most of the time, it's because their movie isn't actually that scary. And so they're relying on jump scares to be the thing that scares the audience. This movie is not a straight horror movie. There are horror elements to it, but it's more of an adventure film, and it's more of a comedy than it is a horror movie. So when this film uses jump scares, to me, it's more of a nod and an homage to the horror movies that it comes from. But it's not like it's doing those things so that it will be more scary. It's just, I don't know. To me, it's more fun. Because that's not the point of this movie. The point of this movie is not to scare you. So it doesn't feel lazy like it does in a lot of horror movies. So we get jump scares where Jonathan pushes the mummy up, and then later on a mummy falls forward, and there's lots of things like that. But I think it works in this movie. I just wrote love Jonathan. Again, not to bag on Jungle Cruise too much, but if you saw my video on that, the weakest part of that movie for me was the brother. And it was because the archetype is so similar to Jonathan in this movie, but the actor just doesn't do as well as the actor that plays Jonathan in this movie. So nice to see Jonathan again. I also wrote love that key, the little star puzzle box key thing. Like, that's a big thing. If I were a more artistic, crafty person, I definitely would have tried to build my own one of those at some point. Not a functional one, just a replica one. And I've dabbled in that kind of prop creating stuff with some Marvel things, but I'm not good at it and I'm not into that world. But man, if I almost don't want to look it up because I'm sure you could probably buy one and they probably cost a lot. But just I thought that was so cool when I was a kid, and you don't know it's a key at first, and then you find out that it's a key later. Or I guess you do know it's a key because we see it. But it's shown very quickly. But then the characters don't know that it's a key. So then they figure out that it's a key. And it's not important to the plot. It's just a cool, neat thing. There's going to be a lot of that coming up. Is that good movies, I don't think are good movies solely because of the story. It's little things throughout, little objects, little props, little character moments, little interactions that make it feel real. That's what makes a movie great, in my opinion, I think. Okay, so I just wrote down the line, apparently he had a very good time. So I mentioned this in my video on some of the other Mummy movies. I understand that some of the racial and cultural depictions in pretty much any movie are not going to be great. I acknowledge that. But this character, I was a big fan of when I was a kid. And that line is something that my father quoted all the time, and it's just like ingrained in my head as just part of my childhood. So it was nice to see that again. It was a wave of nostalgia, getting that delivery again. Okay, what does this say? Oh, John, I just started writing quotes down during the movie. So we've got, well, if it ain't my little buddy Benny. So this is, I want to say, I still say this quote all the time, and most people just don't know what I'm talking about. But like, you know, if I'm looking for something and I finally find it, or if I see someone that I haven't seen in a while, I'll just, if it ain't my little buddy Benny, or if I know they're not going to get my reference, I might just say their actual name so they're not confused. But that's another line that just sticks in my head. Love seeing it. I love seeing it. In the scene where the boat catches on fire and they're all jumping off the water, this is one of those little interactions. So there's this little interaction. Rick he asks Evie if she can swim, which, Jungle Cruise. The woman can't. But he asks her if she can swim. She says yes. He tosses her over. He's getting his stuff. He's about to go over. And then the prison warden is there. He's like, what are we going to do? And Rick says, you wait here. I'll go get help. And he jumps off the boat. And the warden's like, okay. And he waits for a minute. And then he realizes what happened. And it's like, that does not matter to the story. Apparently, I read in the trivia that apparently the director felt like he needed to add that to explain how the warden got off the boat. And I'm just like, my dude, people are just jumping off the boat. You don't need to explain that. But I'm so glad he put that in, because little things like that make this movie so much better. Oh my goodness. And then again, this is I've literally said this quote in the last couple weeks. I say it all the time. No one ever knows what I'm talking about. When they all get to the shore and Benny is like, hey, O'Connell, looks like we got all the horses. And then Rick O'Connell's response, hey, Benny, looks like you're on the wrong side of the river. I love it so much, the interplay between those two characters and just like the casual cockiness of Rick. He's not a jerk. He's just like, really? Benny, like, you're an idiot. You're on the wrong side and you're trying to taunt me because you have horses. Oh, I love it so much. I still say that quote all the time. Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay, so at one point I did write down, how did the Americans get involved? So I understand that the reason that they know where to go and all this stuff is because Benny is helping them. But I'm confused as to why they're going at the same time as the protagonists. Because the protagonists are only going at this time because Jonathan picked the pocket of Rick, found this thing, took it to Evie. It had a map. They went and got Rick, and because the map was burned. And so they're going. It's not, and I'm glad that it's not like, oh, it needs to be done within 2 weeks' time, like it is in Jungle Cruise. So I'm glad that there's not an artificial time restraint on it, but the time that they're going is arbitrary. It just happens to be that that's when they did it. So it's a weird, what's the word I'm looking for? Can't think of the word. It's contrived that the Americans and Benny also just happened to be going at this same time. And I don't think I missed an explanation. I think it's kind of just glossed over. So that's probably my biggest nitpick that kind of bugs me. But the rest of the movie wouldn't be as good if they weren't there. So I understand that it's a flaw. I understand that it's a valid nitpick. But to me, it doesn't ruin the movie for me, because I'm okay with things that don't quite make sense if they make the movie better. And the rest of this movie would not be as good without that other group and without Benny there. So I am good with it, even though I acknowledge it as a flaw. Let me take a quick break, and then we'll be right back. All right, we're back. Sorry about that. I had to go pick up a Casey's breakfast pizza. Those of you that live in the Midwest know exactly what I'm talking about. And those of you that don't, just know that a Casey's breakfast pizza is one of the best things you can eat for breakfast that you don't have to make yourself. Anyway, let's carry on. Talking about The Mummy. Okay, so I wrote down mirrors. I thought that was so cool when I was a kid. Down the mirrors that shine the light through, and oh my gosh. And then, I might be wrong about that. I'm going to move on. We get the line, the prison warden is like, keep an eye out for bugs. I hate bugs. And that's just another thing that my family said all the time. Just, I hate bugs. Is that a bug? I hate bugs. Oh, gosh. Like, again, it's the little things. We get scarabs coming up. Did not help my fear of bugs as a child. All these terrifying scarabs coming up through the ground and things like that. So then I wrote down when the Americans are digging and they find the Book of the Dead, and they're like, that's a book. I wanted treasure. Where's the treasure? And the guy's like, this is the treasure. And then they kick the box, and then there's jars. And then he's like, there's your treasure. And it's like, a little weird, because first of all, no, the book is a treasure. You were right the first time, Egyptologist dude. But then second of all, why do they think jars are better than a book? Like, I understand if they want, like, gold and jewels. But jars? And, like, yeah, those would also fetch a lot of money. But so would the book. It's just a little weird that they comprehend that some things that aren't shiny are still treasure, but not other things that aren't shiny. So I guess it's just like, Americans are stupid. They don't understand the value of books. Maybe that was the joke, but a little weird. A little weird. This movie's not perfect. That's okay. Okay, so then we get into the 10 plagues. We talk about how this mummy's going to bring the 10 plagues with him. And this is where I might shoot myself in the foot here. Those are an idea of the Abrahamic religions, right? Christianity and Judaism. But this movie seems to imply that the Egyptian gods are real, because the curses work, right? So I feel like we're kind of mixing things in, and it seems like the kind of thing that, you know, as people are writing this story that takes place in Egypt, someone was like, oh, you know what else happened there? The plagues. We should throw in the 10 plagues. And this is the first time watching through that I've picked up on this. And maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe those are in other religious accounts also. Or maybe this movie isn't supposed to imply that the the Egyptian deities are real and just this curse is. But it's a little odd to like cross those things. And the plagues, they don't really affect the plot. What happens? Some people get covered in locusts. Some people drink blood. We get the asteroids. Those don't kill anyone important. We get the boils and sores, but the bigger part of that scene is that these people are all slaves to Imhotep. We get flies. Those don't do anything. So, like, they don't actually affect the plot. They don't need to be in there. So I guess that's probably why it doesn't bother me a lot. But it's, again, I'm trying to be fair and point out things that don't make sense, even in movies that I like. It's just a little weird that those are there and that they don't even really do anything. But it looks cool, right? So, again, I've said it before. I'll say it again. I will forgive flaws if a movie is good. And this movie is good. Okay, so then I just wrote real bugs. I think this was just before... I mean, this was like when the Star Wars prequels were coming out, right? It was 1999. This is just before movies really relied on CGI to do, like, everything for them. And so the swarms of bugs in this movie are CGI, but, you know, the close-up shots where there's locusts crawling on the dude's face, those are real. And, like, I think a lot of why this movie holds up as well as it does is because there's a lot of real practical stuff in it still, and it's not too much early CGI. There is some early CGI, the soul floating out of the water, the mummies coming back to life, the face in the sand. But most of that stuff, because it's not meant to look ultra realistic, I think still works pretty well. But if they had tried, again, even Jungle Cruise, they've got these CGI photorealistic animals, but you can just tell that they're not real, and there's just something off about it. And if they had done that in this movie, it would look really bad at this point in time. So I'm just glad that they only used the CG when it was necessary for the scene. Otherwise, when they could, they used real things. I think that's why this movie still holds up as well as it does. I heard somebody else mentioning this because I was watching another video or something where someone was talking about the Mummy. And the guy that the Mummy takes the eyes from is the guy that can't see without his glasses, and so he's kind of wandering around, and it's like, does that mean that the Mummy has bad vision? Because he doesn't act like he has bad vision. Does he just, does he have, I don't know, the optic nerves of someone with better vision and just the eyeballs? So that's a little weird. Again, that's not something I ever thought of until I heard someone else point it out, but it's like, it is a little weird that the guy he takes the eyes from are the guy whose eyes don't work very good. So if I'm ever being chased by a mummy who wants my eyes, I'm going to point out, like, my eyes are horrible, dude. I can't see anything without these bad boys. Maybe he'll leave me alone. I wrote down that yell, though. Oh, I'm like, I don't remember what that's in reference to. The first time Rick O'Connell encounters the mummy, and the mummy does that big open jaw scream, and Rick O'Connell just screams back, right? So the mummy's like, ah! And Rick just like, ah! And then shoots him and runs away. And again, it's just like, it doesn't matter to the story. It just makes a better character. And it's just a nice Rick O'Connell moment. I love it so much. I wrote down Benny Bling. I'm not sure. Oh, all of his necklaces that he's using. Again, that's just like, it's a great character building moment in terms of we understand more about this character because he's exactly the type of character that would do this, where he's just pulling out, a cross. No, that didn't work. This thing. No, that didn't work. This thing. No, that didn't work. And then eventually he gets to the Star of David and he's speaking that language. And so this concept of someone that, well, I don't actually believe in religion. I'm just going to carry all of them with me and go through all of them until one of them works. And it kind of works for him for a little bit. And it's just all this constant buildup of what a horrible person Benny is throughout the whole movie. Yet still, even at the end, Rick tries to save him before that door closes, right? And then he's like, goodbye, Benny. And it's like, he's not broken up about it, but even after all he's done, Rick's still, I wrote down later on the phrase, all around good guy, George of the Jungle. Because Rick still wants to help him, even though he's a horrible person. And we get the line from Evie where she's like, nasty little creatures like yourself always get their comeuppance, or something like that. And it's just like, we are so ready to see Benny get it at the end. It's so satisfying because of all these little touches and the fact that he's just so, I don't think blasphemous is the right word, but the kind of guy that's just going to use every religion until one of them works. And man, whoever was in charge of the character arc of that dude from Lake Town in the Hobbit movies, I don't remember the guy's name, but he's like the worst, and he just keeps doing horrible things. And Luke Evans keeps giving him tasks to do, even though he never does any of his tasks. And then nothing happens to him. Right? He just goes away. I think, unless I've only seen those movies once, and I wasn't paying a whole lot of attention. So maybe I missed it, but I feel like I've heard other people talk about this too. Like, he never gets what we, the audience, want him to get. And it's like, just look at Benny. Just do that. They did it so well, where they're constantly... like, oh, he's going to get it now. Oh, no, he's still good. Okay, he's going to get it now. No, he's still good. And then finally at the end, he's like, yeah, take it, Benny. Oh, man. All right, what else do I have? I wrote down Imhotep doesn't want teeth. So the scene where Benny has set up this meeting between Imhotep and, I forget the dude's name, but the guy that he took the eyes and the tongue from, he's like going back to get the rest of him. But then when we see, after he's left, when the rest of the characters come in and see that he's now dead, and all his flesh and everything is gone, he's still got, like, shiny white teeth. And it's like, did Imhotep not need teeth? I mean, teeth are bones, and he still has his bones. But I don't remember seeing teeth in the Mummy, but maybe they were just the same color as everything else. So does he, like, improve his teeth? Because they don't look like that later. Why didn't he take his teeth? Teeth are weird, man. Teeth are weird. Then I wrote down cats. I love the element of this, that he's scared of cats, and that Rick is smart enough to pick up on that and then use it to his advantage later. Very good. And then I wrote down human sacrifice. So again, I've mentioned this in my videos for the other Mummy movies. The Mummy always wants the love interest character for something, but I never pick up on what exactly. And I've said before, they might say it and I might just miss it, but I feel like if I miss 3 in a row, I hope that's not just me. Like, I think it's unclear. But in this movie, the librarian and the Magi, Ardith, they're talking, and he says it looks like he's chosen his human sacrifice. So it's like, we understand he needs a human sacrifice for this to work. That's why he wants her. So again, just these little things that make us understand what's happening more. Okay, what does this say? Okay, patience is a virtue. This is another quote from this movie that doesn't matter to the plot, but my family picked up on it. And so when Evie is reading this wall, and she's trying to figure out, okay, we thought we were going to find the Book of Amun-Ra, but we actually found the Book of the Dead, so now we need to find the Book of Amun-Ra, so we need to find where they thought the Book of the Dead was, because they got them flip-flopped, and so she's reading these things, and they're just like, hurry, Evie, come on, and she just sings, and she says this little sing-song, she's like, patience is a virtue, and it's just like, I'm trying, guys. Do you think I'm not going as fast as I can? And so that's just another little line that my family would always say, you know, patience is a virtue. And then, of course, Rick's got his response. Not right now, it isn't. But it's just like, come on, guys. She's trying. Cut her some slack. So that was a line that my family quoted a lot in my childhood. We've got the classic bit where Jonathan is out running around and then the mob's coming towards him. And so what does he do? How does he get out of it? See, this is Jonathan. He's not the main guy. He's not as big and strong as Rick. He's not as smart as Evie, but he's resourceful and he's cunning. So what does he do? He pretends to be one of the mobs, the mob people. He's just like, Imhotep. And then he gets the crowd going and then he sneaks away. And like, he's got his own skills. Even though they're not highlighted in this movie, they're there. He's a good character. He's a good supporting character. And that was another thing that, especially my dad, he would do every once in a while. If we were, I don't know, just hanging out, nothing was really going on, he might come into the room, Imhotep. I've got a lot of my childhood coming from this movie. Okay. We've got the librarian going out in a blaze of glory, so when they're all jumping down into the sewer, and the guy's just like, go! And he's slashing away at this mob with the sword. Like, I can't tell you how many times as a kid I would have, you know, wrapping paper tube, reenacting that scene, pretending I'm being swarmed by a bunch of mindless mummy slaves. Then we get Winston, and I just wrote, oh, Winston, and just like, again, Winston, the character, he serves the plot point of getting them a plane so that they can get back to Hamunaptra quickly. That's all he needed to be. And in a worse movie, that's all that he would have been. But in this movie, he's this guy that, oh, I wish I could have died with all my friends in the war, and oh, my life is so boring now, there's no danger anymore. And the bit where he walks through, there's this big fountain in the middle of this room, and he walks through the fountain, and he's like, some idiot spilled his drink. And it's like, he's so good. He's in it for so little, but he's so good. And they set him up earlier. This concept of, I wish I had died, I'm the last one left, all my brothers got to go out in glory. So then when they go back to him later, you understand where they got that idea from, you understand why he's willing to do it. And it's such a small character, but there's so many little things that they added in to make him great and to make him memorable. So then I wrote down the bit about controlling other mummies. which I talked about before. That's not explicitly stated, but I feel like we can infer that from what's going on. And then I wrote Ardith's Sacrifice. So Ardith, who's never called Ardith in this movie, by the way. They don't say his name till the second movie. But, excuse me, the name comes from the original 1931 Mummy movie, where that's the name that the mummy uses when he's disguised himself as normal Boris Karloff. Anyway, there's another scene similar to the librarian one where there's just this swarm of things coming at them, and he's like, "You guys go! Get out of here! Rah, rah, rah!" And he's going down, and he was, apparently, according to the trivia, he was supposed to die there, but Stephen Sommers, the director, was like, "Nah, he's too cool," so he brought him back at the end of the movie, which I'm cool with. But just, again, that idea of, like, I'm going to go down fighting, but what you guys are doing is more important than my life, right? Both him and the librarian, they're part of this Magi. They've been doing this for 3,000 years. Like, it's just, it fits their character to do that. And it's nice to see that they're committed to that, even when, you know, it means that they're going to die. Even though he didn't actually die. He was supposed to. Okay, so then I wrote, grab the hand that grabs the sword. So again, this is just another tiny little thing that's just cool in this movie. There's a scene where Rick O'Connell is pinned down or something, and he's trying to reach this sword that's off to the side. Pardon my farmer tan there. And he can't quite reach it, but then there's this mummy hand that's crawling up towards it at an angle. And so he realizes that once that hand grabs the sword, he can grab the arm of that hand, and it's just like, it's just neat. It's just a neat thing. It shows that he can think, and he's resourceful, and he's clever. And it's so much better than if he had just grabbed the sword and used it. It's just a little tiny extra thing, but it goes a long way. Oh, man. Then we get another bit with Evie trying to read an inscription, and she does the sing-song again where they're like, "Come on, Evie, hurry up." And she's like, "You're not helping." And just that concept of, like, trying to do something while other people are not shutting up, and what you want to do is, like, scream at them to shut up so you can do your work, but the way that you put that out is to, like, sing it to them, to, like, try to calm everybody down. And man, as someone with 6 siblings and who's now a teacher, like, I really feel that of just, like, what you want to do and what you can do, and what's the better option here. So I love that little bit of how Evie's mind works. Then I wrote down my all-around good guy, and then Benny at the end of the movie fading to black as he's surrounded by these scarabs and trapped in this tomb. Man, I love this movie. If you have not seen this movie, I realize I just kind of ruined a lot of it for you, but check it out. It's great. It's really good. Most of it still holds up. It's got 2 sequels. They're not as good, but I think a lot of the goodwill from this one helps carry those ones. So I don't hate them. I don't dislike them. I don't avoid them. I just don't rewatch them as much. And clearly I don't rewatch this one as much because there was some stuff that I didn't remember from this. So this video has gone on pretty long, so I don't want to add too much on to the end here. But those are my thoughts on 1999's The Mummy. Feel free to let me know what you thought, but that's all that I've got. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good day. Hey everybody, Sam Tom here. Just wanted to let you know that I have 2 channels. If you're watching my music content, I also have a movie channel where I talk about movies and TV shows. If you're watching my movie content, I have a music channel where I do song covers, instrument demos, things like that. So feel free to check that out. Obviously, like, share, subscribe, comment, all that YouTube stuff. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good day.